Bonjour, mon ami, and welcome to another episode of ASMR in the best possible timeline. If you're new here, welcome. If you're new to ASMR and you're wondering why I'm whispering, it is one of the many healing modalities I have used to calm my nervous system and heal from dozens of diagnoses, post Lyme exposure and mold exposure, tick-borne illnesses, etc. Today's video is going to be called Break Up with Your Boyfriend because you're out of alignment. And it was inspired by a breakup that a friend of mine had very, very recently. And it's something that I've seen over and over and over again in my 39 years around the sun. And I just feel like we need to have a PSA about it. So, we all have our things, right, that we're like oddly good at. Like I call it like messages from our daemon. So this inner divine spark, it knows things. Different people's spark knows different things, and mine has understood relationships pretty well ever since I was like young. Like I remember being in high school and someone saying like, why do we even date? And I'm like, obviously it's to figure out who we are in a romantic relationship, what we need, what we want, and what we can give. I was like 14 years old when I came up with that, and I stand by that today, you know, over 25 years later. So can I tell you how to manifest your dream relationship? Unless it's with a dog. Obviously not. I am deliciously single. But I can tell you how to avoid being in the wrong relationship. And I can tell you that because I have been in the wrong relationship, not in a very long time, but when I was younger and when I was sort of figuring out who I was in relationship, what I wanted, that sort of thing. So today's episode is going to be very opinionated. It's definitely not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. That's totally fine. Not everything is for everyone. So if you are not picking up what I'm putting down, go ahead and skip to another video. Totally fine. But I'm going to make this video for past me and for my friends who've already heard this like a million times. So this particular friend, right, when she got into this relationship years ago, I told her, I was like, it's not going to work. I'm brutal, by the way, as a friend. I'm absolutely brutal. My Myers-Briggs, like Jungian personality type is INTJ. We are very, very unapologetically blunt, super cerebral. So immediately I was like, he's a nice guy. I like him. I want the best for him. It's not gonna work. And she was like, what? And I was like, it's so obvious. They were never in alignment. They liked each other a lot. They had good chemistry. They had a lot of things that did line up. You know, they were interested in archery and that sort of thing. But an affinity for archery is not what you make a life partner out of. And here's like something that's always fascinated me ever since I was a little tiny kid, right? So when you're a little tiny kid, you see parents of you or your friends or your family, aunts, uncles, you see all these relationships that don't work out. Sometimes it takes decades for them not to work out. I think my parents were together for like 18 years, which is a pretty good run, and it didn't work out. And then a lot of times you see these relationships dissolve after many years, sometimes after children, after marriage, fascinating to me. It's always baffled me how people are like, I'm 19 years old, but I love him and we're gonna be together forever. And it's like, that's adorable that you think that. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. Obviously, high school sweethearts are a thing on occasion. College sweethearts can work out on occasion, but in general, most couples don't work out. And so, are you going to be the exception to that rule? I think it's really, really easy to see, unfortunately. I feel bad for having this, like, sixth sense, right? Because it's not a fun one. I don't recommend it, but it just, it stares at me, like it screams at me when I see this in my relationship and in others. So past event, so brutal. I would be like, I remember I had this boyfriend in college who would talk about getting married, and I would tell him, for us to get married, one or both of us would have to become a completely different person. He'd get so angry. Why was I wasting my time with that individual? I don't know. But I did. He was really nice. He was really funny. He was very handsome. He was a great friend. Not the best boyfriend. A little, like, to my face, he was a great boyfriend, but not the most honest guy. And that's an important value that was, like, always out of alignment for us. And I knew that. So that's why I knew he had, like, no long-term potential. So I think an alignment of values is so important, and how you feel is like a flashlight telling you whether or not you're experiencing an alignment of values, right? So this particular friend that just went through a breakup, she is and always has been more spiritual than her ex, more into personal growth, development, that kind of thing. And he has moved a little bit on those paths since they got together years ago, but she's moved a lot. So he was always gonna be like 8 steps behind her. Actually, I think when they got together, he was 8 steps behind her, and then, like, she'd move 12 more steps and he'd move 5, and she'd go 10 and he'd go 2, and, like, so actually the distance between them just kept growing. And I could see that from, like, week 2. I could see that. Other friend I had was actually, she's bisexual. We went to law school together, and she was engaged to a girl at one point when we were in law school, and I was like, that's really cute that you think that's gonna work out. Like, that's adorable. I told you I'm brutal with my honesty, and all of my friends can probably vouch for that. And she was like, why don't you think it's gonna work out? And I was just like, why do you? That woman was like, she had a big anxious attachment style, and my friend had an avoidant one. And so there's a certain alchemy and, like, chemistry that can be really moving, very stirring, kind of alluring between those. But at the end of the day, she needs someone who doesn't need her that much, and who isn't always, like, doesn't always need to be having these, like, complicated talks of what are we doing and where's our relationship going and that kind of thing. That really exhausted her. And again, this is something I could see within the first month of them dating. I'm like, that's great that you guys like going to concerts together, but life is not going to concerts together. You have to feel safe in a relationship, and this individual does not feel safe, and they're never going to feel safe with someone who has an avoidant leaning attachment style. And shocking, they did not work out. And she's actually engaged now And she was like, I think so too. And I was like, no, you hold on to him. Because they just brought the best out of each other from the beginning. That's not to say that, like, if you ever disagree with somebody about something, just like end it, which is something I might do. Don't do that. But it is to say that you have to get really, really clear about those things that 14-year-old Eve had stated: what you want, what you need, and what you can give. And you have to make sure there's an alignment between your three and their three. There's this book, I've mentioned it before, called The 4-Man Plan, and she makes a joke. She's like, I'm Asian, we're good at math, I was bad at dating, so I turned it into a math problem. And she has this whole matrix, and she tells you to write down everything you want in a partner, and then she's like, and then add to that list honest, loving, and willing. That's your new list. Like, forget everything else you thought you wanted. I'm not quite there, but I do think that those three are enormous, and it's gonna be basically impossible for you to make a relationship work if those three are not present. So you do have to have someone who is honest, loving, and willing. That's just starter. If they're not all of those things, it's not gonna work. So let's talk about love, because I think I have an operational definition of love that I read in a book, and it works really, really well for me. And if this doesn't resonate with you, like, that's fine. Stick with whatever your definition of love is. But one of my very, 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 very favorite books of all time is called The Art of Loving by Erich Fromm. And in it, Fromm says there's, like, I think it's 4-prong evaluation for love. So first you have to know the beloved. You can only love someone as much as you know them, right? Like, let's see, I never met Kurt Cobain, but I love him in so much as I know him. I know, what I think I know about him is that he was very, like, sensitive and empathetic and deliberate and unapologetically authentic, and I love all of that. Now, obviously, having never met Kurt Cobain, there's a million other things that I might love about him if I knew them, but I don't know them, so I can't love him, right? So that's the first prong. It's like, you actually have to know the beloved. And then you have to respond, which in that umbrella of responding is respecting, right? Like, if someone's on fire and you don't try to help them, you're obviously, like, you don't care if they're on fire. So this next prong of being responsive implies a respect and a reverence for that individual. So you have to respond with active care and concern. A lot of people fail that. A lot of people feel love and they're not acting on it. So they have a feeling of love, but their practice of love is wildly insufficient, and it's not going to sustain a relationship, not like a happy relationship, right? So is your partner concerned and acting on concern for the things that you value? What upsets you? What elates you? Are they trying to lift you up and help remove obstacles, or are they fucking you up and putting obstacles in your way? Are they not really is responding to all of your needs and you're responding to your partner's needs, is that process exhausting you? Is it completely draining you because you're just out of alignment? That happens a lot, you know. We know, but then like we selectively forget that opposites attract and they do not stay together. Like we know that people with avoidant attachment styles often gravitate to people with anxious attachment styles and make each other miserable. We know that. But we get so swept up by chemistry and in feelings, and those are yummy, and I get it. And this is what I always tell my friends who are in this kind of relationship, that I'm like, this is doomed, but good luck with that. So in my family, I don't know where my mom got this, but we talk about our life as if we're watching a movie, and say, years ago, when my friend started dating this guy, I was like, you can watch that movie if that's what you need to do, and maybe you'll learn things and maybe you'll grow, but this is not the movie that's going to last the rest of your life. And it wasn't. So, sometimes we need to watch a movie that is not going to work out, and maybe we need to get those hard lessons and that kind of thing. But ultimately, like, you're looking for a responsiveness, a willingness, a love, an honesty, but you also need to have an alignment of lifestyle, goals, values, and intentions, right? So like John Gottman, the relationship expert, he's written several books, my favorite of which is called The Science of Trust. It's like this thick, and he goes into a lot of the science. He's been studying relationships for like 2 decades, and this man can sit down with a couple, and within like, I think it's 15 minutes, with over 90% accuracy, which is basically unheard of in this field, he can say, I give it 18 months, or I give it 2 years, or I give it 5 years, and he's right. And he can tell you how long a couple is going to be together. And he says that what he's really looking for is like the way that people are responding to your bid, so you can respond. God, it's been forever since I read this, but like destructive, which is like, he always gives the example of a couple, a woman is reading and the man is like an avid bird watcher, and he's like, oh my gosh, honey, look at out the window here, there's a rare spotted freckled bougainvillea bird. That, I obviously just made that up, it's a flower, but anyway. And at that point, she can be active destructive. She can be like, I'm reading, fuck you and your bird. Or she can be passive destructive and just like ignore him. Or she can be active constructive, put down the book, go look at the bird even though she doesn't care about it, and be like, oh my god, that's great because it's important to him. Or she can be passive constructive. What would that look like? I guess that would look like just like, that's great, honey, thank you for sharing, and then going back to her book. That one I'm a little less clear on. It's been years since I've read any of this. And he's just looking for how people are responding to one another's bids. And that is what he uses to determine whether or not people are going to stay together. Now, outside of Gottman, what defines or what we can objectively observe about couples who stay together and work out versus those who don't comes down a lot down to like lifestyle, right? So if he wants to live in the city and not have a car and take public transportation and never have children, and she wants to live off the grid in the woods and raise her kids like the movie Captain Fantastic, that's not gonna work. That's completely doomed. So it's an alignment thing. Now, have I totally passed on someone that I was like in great evolution of this process for me, and that'll probably be on Patreon. But just the short of the long is I was a very masculine energy girly for a very long time. And I'm an 80s baby, and in the 80s and the 90s, the message that all us latchkey kids got from our parents was that, like, you know, there's this wave of feminism that really valued independence and sort of looked down on the traditional family, and like it was all about careers, and we were raised to like not value love, not value romance, not value marriage, and really concern ourselves with being able to provide for ourselves and being hyper independent and all of that sort of thing. So I was in that energy for like most of my life, and now there's this interesting shift that's happening, where people are talking about the divine masculine and the divine feminine in a way that just did not exist when I was young. Although I will say, to her credit, my mom in like 1999, I remember sitting in the kitchen and she's telling me that like the oligarchs are going out of their way to masculinize women and feminize men and destroy like the family model. And she even said, you know, one day people aren't going to want to be called him and her. Everyone's going to want to be called they and them. And like in the 90s, I was like, you are so out there, Mom. Like, where do you even come up with this stuff? I wish she was alive now so I could ask her, because that's exactly what happened. So, I mean, not to say that like some people are not born in a body that feels out of alignment with them, but the amount of young people now who find gendered pronouns to be triggering is wild compared to the fact that it didn't exist at all in 1999. Like, sometimes people wanted to be the opposite gender, but no one wanted to be like a neutral gender. That's totally new in my world, at least. So I embodied masculine energy for most of my life, and I really didn't have a lot of softness in me. I didn't have an ability or even a willingness to receive, which is what the divine feminine area is all about now. That was just, I was hyper masculinized. I was very not like ambitious. I never wanted to be a millionaire, but I was hyper independent, you know. And I remember I bought my first car by myself. I put myself through undergrad. Like, the last time my parents bought me clothes, it was a white pair of jeans when I was 13 years old, and then I got my first job and I paid for everything after that. I didn't have any desire to be soft or to be led or guided or submit or any of that. I didn't want any of that. And it was during that masculine energy prolonged phase of my life that I passed on someone who now I realize is like the embodiment of everything I wish I had in a partner. He's very, very smart and hardworking and has this like leadership capacity, and also just like an honesty and a trust and a morality and all these things that like I knew I valued, but I didn't realize how rare they were, how school, I had just gotten out of a relationship. I was miserable in law school. Being in law school made me realize that I wanted to be closer to the art side of the movie making process, right? Like, I went to law school thinking that I would be like a talent agent and a manager and make deals and be part of the movie industry that way. And then being in law school made me realize that, like, no, I want to be on set in any capacity. Even if it's the girl getting coffee, I want to be like closer to the art project. So the thing that like divided us is I really wanted to co-create art with someone. You know, YouTube was kind of like just in an infancy back then. I wanted to do something expressive and artistic and creative with my partner, and he was like too shy for that, which is so silly because he's actually like hilarious, and now he makes these wonderful videos with his children. Whatever, that's neither here nor there. The point is that, like, I wish I had understood how much I value that divine masculine energy and how rare it is. Back then, I would be a married woman today. Probably wouldn't have gotten sick either. So c'est la vie. Yeah, anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. Kind of more something that goes on my Patreon, but yeah, just if you are in a relationship where you don't feel safe and you have to check your partner's phone and your needs aren't being met and it feels like work for everybody there, that's not gonna work out. And honestly, if it does, it's like even worse. Because I have seen too, more rare, but I've seen it, people who stay together for decades, people who get together in their 20s, they're still together in their 80s, they don't like each other, they can't stand each other, they don't want to be buried next to each other, and they've spent an entire lifetime with a person who makes them miserable. Why would you do that? I mean, maybe at first they stay together for the kids, and then it's just comfortable and financial reasons and whatever, but like that's no, 13-year-old is dreaming about that when they grow up. That's not what we're going for, right? And the brutal truth is that in order to find the person that is in alignment with you, you have to stop settling for and wasting your time with, like they say in, what's that other book called? He's just not that into you. Don't waste the pretty. Don't waste the pretty on these relationships that aren't serving you, and that are doomed, and they're not going anywhere. If you're there, sometimes you need to be there to learn more of what you want, what you don't want, why your taste is horrible. We all have bad taste, like honestly. It's very, very, very rare that we're not starting out our dating life looking for our unmet childhood needs. That's like classic Freud. I mean, say what you want about Freud. He literally invented talk therapy and got people to understand that women were trauma victims instead of just poisoned by their ovaries. So like, I think everyone needs a lesson in Freud because we got a little lost in the like Oedipus complex. There's so much more to Freud than that. And yeah, I think a lot of people are playing out stories from their childhood in their romantic relationships, and they're not going to go any different in adulthood. It's not going to be a better story. You're not going to make the narcissist love you when he's your husband instead of your father. That's not happening, okay? Like, we but you can spin your wheels for years in the wrong relationship. So I think it's important for us to be cognizant of what kind of relationship we're in. I'm at a point in my life where, I haven't been on a date in over a year, and that like surprises people. They're like, oh my god, why are you single? And I'm sure people want to date you, and like the answer is yeah. People who don't know me at all see my glorious hair, and which I wash with apple cider vinegar and cut myself, and they think they want to date me. They don't know anything about me. I am incredibly demanding. I am not for most people. I don't even date people who haven't stopped watching porn of their own volition. Like, it's a small group. That's a small subsect of the modern man. So, like, just based on that prong, most people are not getting through. You also have to be, like, wildly spiritual. I'm not trying to date an atheist. Like, nothing, no shade against atheists. I was an atheist for a really long time. It's just out of alignment with me at this point in my story. Maybe one day I'll switch teams again. Who knows? But yeah, I'm at a point where like I'm done. I feel done learning the lesson of like how to partner with someone who's not in alignment. That's just, I have no interest in that anymore. And so I'm looking for someone who is in alignment, and I'm also rarely doing anything outside of my house, so it's not going great. But it's better for me than partnering with the wrong person. Although I understand that, like from a feeling place, that is a difficult curriculum to navigate. It's harder to be alone in like literally every respect. I mean, my life would be easier if I had a partner to help me with doggy diabetes, if I had a partner to, just help me navigate my health stuff. Like, all of that would be easier. But people are not means to my ends. They are ends in and of themselves. They deserve that amount of respect, and I'm not going to disrespect myself or somebody else by getting into a partnership that isn't in alignment, where we're not both just properly aligned, where we're not in resonance with one another's goals and values. So for example, there's Chris Williamson, I think that's his name. I keep getting this clip on my Instagram feed of Jordan Peterson on, I think his name is Chris Williamson's podcast, talking about the Michelangelo effect. And who is it? Is it the Zen Buddhists who talk about the uncarved block? So there's this chunk of marble, right? And I look at it and I see a chunk of marble because I am not a sculptor. Michelangelo looks at it and he sees David, and he chips away at that until the rest of us see David. And that's the kind of relationship you want to be in. The one where you say, I see your potential, not I see what I want you to be. It's I see the light shining through you. That's another part of Erich Fromm's thing. You have to want the best for your partner, independent of how that affects you. So I think I've talked about this in other videos, I think probably on my Patreon though, where like, let's say there's a couple and they live on the West Coast, but somebody gets this amazing job opportunity on the East Coast, and the partner wants them not to take it, even though that's like everything they've ever wanted. That's a bad partner. Like, I don't care if you move, I don't care if you do long distance, I don't care if you break up, but like, if all of their dreams are coming true 3,000 miles away, the idea of like holding them back from that especially in this day and age, like, it's not like we live in the Oregon Trail and you'd have to, like, travel for 6 months to see each other. You know, we live in a very global society, and if you really, really love someone, then you want them to manifest their potential. You want that David to come through the unmute block. So you want to find someone who sees you and your value. I had a best friend a long time ago who, I can't stand her husband. I don't know if they're still together. But just because, like, all the things that were so special about this person, I just felt like he could not see. And then actually, after they stopped going, or like started going out, she stopped writing and she stopped sewing and she stopped all of these things that were like just a beautiful expression of her unique bundle of potential. So I hated that for her. And when you hate someone's husband, your friendship falls apart. Plot twist, just in case you didn't know that. I mean, I still absolutely love her, but it was always like, I was just sick of seeing her husband. I just did not respect that guy at all. Because, yeah, I just felt like she's so special in ways that I'll never ever be able to see. So, get with someone who sees all the ways that you're special. And it's not your face, it's not your body, it's not your bank account. That's not what's special about you, even if those things are noteworthy. Yeah, you want to find someone who shares your values, wants the same things out of life, and who can give you what you want and what you need with joy instead of pain and suffering. You know, like, it shouldn't, there's going to be some amount of work and compromise in any relationship, but like, the work to joy ratio should hugely be joy work. Like, and if that's out of alignment, like, go ahead, do the thing for a year, 2 years, 5 years even. Do the thing for 60 years and be fucking miserable. Do whatever you want. Life is a choose your own adventure thing. But I'm here to tell you that, like, I've seen just a handful of relationships where you go like, that is what I want. And sis, you're probably not in it. If you're confused, you're definitely not in it. I'll give you one last example of a relationship, of the relationship. When I think of romantic relationships, I think of Ralph and Connie. So, I don't know why I just said that, like, I'm from Jersey, Connie. So, I went to undergrad, and I had a professor named Ralph Quinn. He was phenomenal, amazing. I mean, this guy gave lectures all over the world about morality. I love Ralph Quinn. He's phenomenal. And sometimes his wife would come and sit in our classes, and you could always tell when Connie was in the classroom. She'd sit way in the back, and I'd sit right in the front like a total nerd. And Ralph would just get this, like, pep in his step. Like, literally, he would bounce, and he'd smile, and he'd bounce, and his energy was just wildly different when Connie was in the room. Even though she never said a word, she just sat in the way back. Having taken class after class, I took all of his classes, I could tell when Connie was in the room, and I'd look back, and sure enough, Connie would be there. So, the interesting thing about Ralph and Connie is he had gotten his undergraduate degree in psychology when they met, and he was pursuing his PhD when they got together. Now, when you get a PhD in psychology, which, by the way, like, it's easier now, but back then, the acceptance rate for a PhD program in psychology was like 4 to 6%, whereas, like, med school was like 50%, so it was significantly harder to get into a PhD program for psychology than, like, anything else. It's different now. But, degree in psychology, or at least back when he got it, probably like in the 90s, maybe even the 80s. You have to take tons of therapy. You meet with a therapist, I think, at least an hour a day, if not 3 hours a day, was his curriculum that he told us. So he's doing tons and tons of therapy, right? And he had some mommy issues. Like I said, you're gonna play out in your adult relationships what happens in your childhood relationships. Now, Ralph's mom wasn't a bad lady. She didn't like beat her kids or anything, but she was very much in her masculine energy. She was very career driven and oriented, and Ralph was always trying to get what he called like the nanny out of her. Like he just wanted warmth and affection and all of these things that are perfectly normal to want from your mother, and he just didn't feel like he ever got them from his mom. So fast forward, he's an adult, he's in his 20s, he's dating, and he's enamored with a woman who's running for mayor in Hawaii. Now I want to say he lived in California at the time, and this woman lives in Hawaii. So like, obstacle number one, an ocean. Then there was the fact that like dating, making a family, being a partner was not high on this woman's priority list. And unconsciously, that's what he was attracted to. So he's like writing her poetry in Spanish that she doesn't speak Spanish, and she's not that interested in him, and she probably never bothered to translate or even understand what that was about. So he's writing her this poetry and sending her letters and visiting her and pining after her attention and affection, and it's never coming. And they're not together though, so he's also seeing other people, one of which is Connie. And Connie lives close to him. Connie will spend time in his van. I think he lived in a van. At this point, she'll spend time with him in his van, which is like the ability to see David in the uncarved block of a man living in his van. Like, that woman's a fucking keeper, dude. So, but he doesn't appreciate that. He doesn't appreciate anything. One day, Connie grabs him by the lapels and she says, "Don't you see? I can give you what you need." And because Ralph had been doing tons and tons of therapy, it clicked in a moment. He went, "Oh my God, she's right." And he realized that everything he wanted from the aspiring mayor of Hawaii, he was already getting in his van in California. He just didn't want it from that person because she was giving it to him, because he didn't have to earn it, because he didn't have to fight for it, because he wasn't playing out the same story that he played with his mom. So with his mom, he was always trying to like earn and deserve her love. So he pined after women where he felt like he always had to try really hard to earn and deserve their love. And when it was just handed to him, he didn't want it. But because he was doing all that intense therapy and working on these mommy issues, when she said that, he realized she's completely right. And he just shifted. He did a major inner pivot and decided to shift all of his attention to her. And once he decided that he wanted that from her, and he was getting it already, they just had the best relationship I've ever seen, I've ever heard of. He had lots of personal anecdote stories about how he was able to succeed in his career in ways that he wouldn't have been able to without her. Like, they really did the uncarved block thing of being like, I see your potential, and I'm going to help you manifest it, and I'm going to help just get rid of every obstacle in the chip away at your potential and help you manifest it, because that is high on my value hierarchy, and it worked for Ralph and Connie. So the moral of the story is, find you a guy who's getting his PhD in psychology. That's what I'll be looking for. Yeah, anyway, so that's just my long rant about how, if you're confused, I've been in relationships where you're like, I'm confused, I don't understand, and you feel like a detective. You're like, I need to figure this out. You don't need to figure anything out, just dump him. I figured it out for you. He's not the one. If you're confused, he's not the one, and if he is, if you spend the next 60 years with him, that's even worse. Because there's somebody out there who can put a pep in your step and a smile on your face and a joy in your voice and can build you up. And even if there's not, it's better to have peace and tranquility and alone time to figure out who you are, what your worth is, what your value is, what you want in life, than to be like spinning your wheels, bending like water, like we so often do, to try to appease someone who's just not in alignment with us. And that's it. Like, you just, either you're in alignment or you're not. Sure, people can change and they can grow together in alignment or grow apart, but you're probably never gonna turn the girl who wants to live off the grid into a city girl. And you're probably, kids, if one person wants kids and the other person doesn't, good luck. Like, that's a really big, important life choice, that if you're not in alignment on, it's just a recipe for resentment, in my opinion. So that's just my long rant about how, if you're confused, your relationship's probably not going to work out, and you're better off that way. Take it from me, someone who has spent most of the last decade alone, like, it's not my favorite. I have been in empowering romantic relationships that were in alignment. That's better. That's 100% better. But I've also wasted time with people because I didn't know who I was, what I wanted, what I could give, all that sort of thing. I'm glad to be out of that phase of my life, and I want that for you too. So, yeah, without further ado, I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I hope that this video has been informative, validating, inspiring, something. It's insert positive emotion, because that is what I want for you, friend. There's so many ways to walk this earth, and there's somebody out there who is going to put a pep in your step